David.
Hello, Mark.
What is going on?
Is this naught for your comfort? You know, I feel really, rather than wearing a suit, I should have come in sackcloth and ashes, you know, with the mark of the beast upon me.
Well, I thought we'd get you to confirm the truth of this aphorism that Britain has always been a nation of immigrants, by which I think factually it means there were 27 Huguenots a few centuries, including the forebears of Nigel Farage, I believe. But other than that, you're stretching this whole nation of immigrants.
The quote that people always use, if we're really going to try and pin it down historically, is Daniel Defoe at the beginning of the 18th century, who talks about us as a mongrel nation because we are British, Roman, Danish, Anglo-Saxon, that extraordinary melding which takes place in the so-called Dark Ages. That's true. But the modern view of historians now is, although there were waves of immigrants, there was a Norman conquest, there was a Roman conquest, there was an Anglo-Saxon conquest, there was a Danish conquest. Probably, even in the case of the Anglo-Saxons, relatively small numbers were involved. And then, from that point onwards, you produce a remarkably stable society right through the Middle Ages into the early modern period. There are indeed waves. The thing that characterises most of the waves is they're extraordinarily skilled. If you were talking about unskilled and skilled, if you look, they were still unpopular, don't doubt it. But if you look in the 16th century, there are the refugees from the Netherlands. They are keys in the development of East Anglia, of the so-called New Draperism, whatever. Yeah. Then there are the French Huguenots, the most sophisticated, able population of bankers, of craftsmen, of silversmiths, of architects, designers, the cream of France, and then the very different immigrations, Irish in the 19th century, to build the railways. Enormous influx of labour. No, huge numbers.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call the Irish, that's internal settlement within the United Kingdom.
In many ways, it changes things more than any other immigration. If you look at the very different political character of both Glasgow and Liverpool, that is the result of that. If we're talking about the impact of immigration. No, but we need to be honest and frank about these things.
Being honest, and in fact, I'm looking at it from an Irish point of view. That if you just take, English, Scottish, Irish, Welsh, you can make the argument that that's enough diversity for anyone, given some of the consequences of it.
On the other hand, you see, you can argue, and I would argue, that one of the reasons why we have actually coped rather well, generally, with immigration, is precisely because there was never a British nation. Despite the union of England and Scotland in the 18th century, we never really called ourselves Britons. There was always a sense you were English or Scots. British was for export. Yes. Back home, there were the different identities. And I think that essentially we're not really, although we boast of it, and Nigel Farage has made his entire career out of it, we are not a nation state. We are a monarchy. You owe loyalty not to the nation, but to the monarch. And this, in many ways, has helped smooth this extraordinary change. Right, the change. Let's now be quite clear about the extent of the change. Do you know what the number of people with an origin in the EU who have decided permanently to settle here is? They had to choose, of course, once we left the EU. Do you know what the number is?
No, what's that?
6 million.
6 million?
It is 1/10 of the entire population.